fuck, there's a lot of you. I used to present, in my old life, I used to present all the time, and now to really be here talking about what means so much to me is a whole other experience. So I'm just like trying to keep a panic attack. So I want to start with a couple things. This was where a little bit of the content warning comes into play. I will be making some reference to sexual abuse and to male violence. I'm not going to be going into any depth. It's not going to be, I'll be making reference to, but it's quite contained. And it's just to provide some context for what I want to speak to. And the other thing is just acknowledging a little bit about my identity. Being a white middle-aged cis dude up on stage trying to talk about what it is to be a man in the world, and just being really aware of my blind spots because I'm kind of in it and very nervous. I've got like real nervousness around and vulnerability around my missing something, saying the wrong thing. I don't claim to have the answers. I'm just going to share with you a little bit of the journey that I've been on. And that might be helpful just by way of context. So it goes back to a psychedelic trip. 4 years ago, over 4 years ago. This was actually the end of a process and the beginning of a new chapter. My first experience with psychedelics, it was offered to me as something really gentle and heart-opening. I went in asking the really simple question, what is my purpose? And feeling like, what a ridiculous question to ask, as though I'll ever get a clear answer to that. 6 hours later, I could see what I was meant to do, who I was meant to work with, the boundaries that I needed to have in place for my client's safety, for my safety. I could see the fucking website. I mean, really, this was gentle, heart-opening was not what it was. But at the end of 6 hours, it all came down to this really simple mantra: I am sacred whore. I am sacred whore. I am sacred whore. So the journey that I've been on myself goes back 25 years plus, more than half my life, where I've been involved in one-to-one therapy, group therapies, personal development workshops. Anyone remember HI? Did a training to become a psychotherapist. But about 15 years ago, I discovered conscious kink, and conscious kink was transformative for me on a number of fronts. One was to do with power dynamics, and to really understand with that clarity how power works, to understand how power operates not just in kink scenes, but in our social environments, in our day-to-day, in each conversation where a raised eyebrow can change that feel and the dynamic between two people, and understanding too the wider structural impacts of power dynamics in the culture that we live in. An understanding around communication and consent, and just how important those are for creating safety in kink scenes. And reclaiming my body through ritual, through reclamation of my body and power. I had the privilege of experiencing in a fire ritual my power in the way that I'd never known it before. Not power with, not power over, but simply the pure embodied experience of when power was in my muscles, in my skin, hovering over the hairs on my body. And to know that that was mine, and that was mine to hold and to control and to wield in the world as my responsibility. And then of course there was pleasure. And just discovering that my body could be a source of pleasure, the divinity in that was just an extraordinary thing for me. So there I am in this trip, kind of connecting all of these dots of my life and recognizing my purpose to work with other people to support them on their journeys of healing and recovery around sexual abuse and sexual trauma. Because there is this thing, I don't actually know this book, just to say, but I was looking for a slide that speaks to this. My father was born in 1925, almost 100 years ago. He was in the Raj in India when there was still a British Empire. So colonialism, patriarchy, these themes run deep in me. He was in the Second World War, my grandfather was in the First World War. Trauma just rippled through our family and found its expression through sexual transgressions. So I grew up with this understanding that men are perpetrators. This was my truth, this was my understanding. So how to then be in the world as a young man and try to reconcile my truth of who I was, that was really what led me first into therapy in my early 20s, trying to make sense of this. Yeah. I made a note on a bit of paper, and now I can't remember. Okay, yeah. My journey has been then to heal my relationship to both my sex and my gender, and to then work with other people to try to heal or to offer healing around these things with the people that I'm working with. Because I really understand this. So I work with women, trans, non-binary people, the disabled, the differently bodied. I really get this aspect of how dangerous it can feel to be in the world. I had to face this myself in some of the workshops I was doing around recognizing my own fear of male violence. You know, in workshops at the Human Awareness Institute, as it once was, to be intimate with another male body was terrifying to me, because that really landed for me. Towards the end of last year, a client said to me just so beautifully, "You are helping me heal from the wounds inflicted by the men in my life." And that hit me on another level that I wasn't expecting. Because I know that my purpose is to work with sexuality, with healing of wounds, with healing of trauma. But it really brought home to me that I also have a responsibility to be doing what I can in however small a way to work with cis men to try to avoid that harm in the first place. So my mission statement is to heal the wounds inflicted by my gender, by men, and by patriarchy, working with all those harmed or otherwise impacted, so this now includes cis men, to create safety and trust with intimacy, vulnerability, and presence. So that led to Dating and Desire. I've got a YouTube channel. How the fuck did that happen? It's like, I am so not a natural social media kind of guy. Total introvert. Put me in a room on my own, I'm happy. But it felt like maybe I can be somehow talking to men about, you know, how to interact with the world differently. There is so much extraordinarily misogynistic and toxic advice out there in the dating world that makes my skin crawl. Still based on pickup artistry from the 90s and 2000s about manipulation, primarily manipulation to get what you want, to get sex. So really all I was trying to say was how to not be a dick in dating and relationships. It's actually pretty simple. So I managed to make like 2-3 videos, and then, you know, with my ADHD hyper-focused brain was like, okay, I need to write some scripts. And writing really helps me to get clear and for me to really start to understand the things that I want to talk about. So there I am writing, thank you. 2 minutes, fuck. So there I am writing through Christmas into January, into February. I've got 8,000 words. I'm like, what the fuck? Then I realized, that's because it's a book. And for anyone that's writing a book, this is like just the top tip that I heard. If you make your own like mock-up of what the cover of the book might be, it's really motivating because it kind of feels real then, right? So this is just me having a bit of a mess around. But Shameless feels like really important. Shameless is about recovering from myself, the shame that I experienced, but also finding a way to break free from the shackles of the life that I was living, to own my truth, to do to follow my purpose in the world. 2 minutes, fuck. If you've not seen this is an incredible film on Netflix, Beyond Men and Masculinity. I jumped ahead. The basic premise of the book that I'm writing builds on something that Bell Hooks wrote in The Will to Change, that patriarchy makes emotional cripples of men.
Yeah.
This is really like, she is not pulling any punches, and that really made so much sense to me. The opening scene of this film is absolutely heartbreaking in the way that it addresses how young boys are treated and socialized, and the direct transmission of that into violence towards women. So my challenge, my call to action for all men is to reclaim these parts of ourselves that were denied us and were cut off from us as young boys. Like this is like the key thing that I want to convey. I'm being told time's up, fuck. I'm losing my thread here.
Doing great.
Thank you. Thank you. For me, it was about redefining for myself what it is to be a man in the world, and letting go of all the structures that the patriarchy underpins as well, including capitalism and the work culture and all of that shit. We have to go back to first principles and own our own lives. This is the only life we have. Okay, just two very quickly. These are just some random things that I'm wanting to talk about in the book, but that one, the secret to the best sex you'll ever have. We got it in the very first lecture, it's safety. If we can get to that point where our lovers, our partners, our friends feel safe, if we feel safe in ourselves as men, everything else will follow. I've got a GoFundMe page. If any of this resonates and you'd like to support me in writing this book, please talk to me after, and thank you.